Josh Allen's back, baby, and so are the Bills. Fret not, Bills Mafia. The team is now 1-1 on the season with a 38-10 win over the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm Kevin Carroll. Welcome to the Buffalo End Zone podcast, everyone.
And I'm Jon Scott from Highmark Stadium. Boy, what a difference 6 days makes, Kevin. The Bills going from an ugly, unacceptable loss to the Jets to completely dominating outside of the first two possessions here against the Raiders.
Yeah, and it starts and ends with the play of Josh Allen. Completely different, John, than a week ago on the broadcast. 13 of 13 to start the game. Best start passing-wise of Allen's career. So he's done a lot. Things calmed down a little bit for him. It looked like the play calling was more focused on taking what the defense, the Raiders, are giving him, and he delivered and a lot more. So Allen the focus, because everyone was crapping on him, and rightly so, for about a week after throwing 3 interceptions and that one fumble against the Jets. But now here we are, like you said, 6 days later, completely different vibe around Josh Allen and this Bills team.
He did. Not like we are some football savants, and I think that's what made this such an easy fix. He did what everyone told him that he should have been doing in the first place. Don't play hero ball. Don't chuck it 40 yards down the field into double coverage when there are people wide open closer to you just to simply live to fight another down. And he did that so methodically against the Raiders that I'm sitting there charting it, and I'm looking at his first 13 passes. He ties a career high, going 13 for 13 to start the game, most completions in a row that he's ever thrown in his career. 5 yards, -4, 11, 2, 1, 7, 3, 7, 19, 5, 2, 10, 26. Those are the first 13 completions for Josh Allen, and it continued that way as things went along. I'm not going to go through all of his 31 completions, but there were only a handful that were more than 10 yards, and he just continually, you watch the play unfold, it's getting it out quick to James Cook, it's getting it out quick to Dalton Kincaid or to Dawson Knox or to Gabe Davis or Stephon Diggs. He distributed the ball well, he took what the defense gave him, and allowed his playmakers to make plays. It's the recipe we've been beating the drum for, and yes, the Josh Allen experience is fantastic and has led this team to the cream of the crop and him as a quarterback in all of the National Football League, but it's not always necessary. The pedal does not always have to be to the metal, and I thought it was a real mature afternoon for Josh Allen to not only bounce back, but to do so in this fashion.
John, they kept cutting away to Ken Dorsey in the booth during the game. I know Dorsey was part of the package with Josh Allen as far as, is it Dorsey's play calling or is it Allen's bad decisions? When you had immediate reaction after the Jets, and I think we all agreed it was more on Allen, but when you looked at what Dorsey put together with this offense, and also, John, adding in a number of fourth downs they went for in this one. Yeah, they came up short on one of them, but it really delivered. It looked like there was a lot of faith in this offense and Josh Allen as the game progressed.
Right. It looked horrible to start. You're thinking, you played like this against the Jets. The offense is discussed throughout the week as in turmoil, and your quarterback is doing this wrong, and it's run up the middle, and a pass, 3 and out. And you're thinking, this is the response that Ken Dorsey drew up. If you're a lot of times offensive coordinators, if people don't know this, they script a lot of the early portion of the game, 10, 15 plays, and then as the game evolves and you need to make adjustments based upon the defense is when you get off script. If that was the script, it sucked. I mean, let's be perfectly honest there. But then you move forward. 7 plays for 28 yards after the turnover, touchdown. 11 plays, 59 yards, 84 yards, I should say, net there, touchdown. 8 plays, 57 yards, touchdown. 15 for 75, touchdown. 9 for 37. Then the 11-play, 95-yard drive that really put this one away in the fourth quarter. I mean, that is the way that offense is supposed to hum. And I asked multiple guys in the locker room, Mitch Morse, Dawson Knox, if this is the way that you feel that an offense is really in a groove. And Dawson Knox used the phrase imposing their will. And they just wanted to keep going at him and at him and at him. And this is something that while deep plays and big plays and chunk plays are important and they're super cool to watch and super fun to talk about, I think this was a greater indicator that the Bills offense is truly back on track. And Ken Dorsey's play calling was part of that. It was Josh Allen's decision making. I think it was Ken Dorsey's play calling as well, setting everyone up to succeed and allowing, for the most part, at least one outlet for an easy completion for Josh Allen, where he didn't feel the need that everything was just grinding out and so much harder. This defense is not the Jets defense, but you got to give credit and you got to do what you got to do against who you're playing against. I think everyone involved on offense from the top down really responded appropriately, and it makes you have more confidence moving forward.
One of the big questions coming out of week one was about pass catcher number 2, John, behind Stefon Diggs. Top of your head, you go right to Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis led all receivers in this one, just shy of 100 yards receiving, and did have a really nice touchdown grab, a contested ball where a lot gets made about how Gabe Davis catches footballs, but what he did with that one on that touchdown was quite impressive. So an impressive day overall for Gabe Davis, and Allen able to spread the ball around. It wasn't Diggs or Davis. He really worked that ball around to multiple targets in this one.
It's easy because of the structure of some of the best teams in football, and you just want the rich want to get richer to say the secondary option for the Bills passing game needs to be one person. And the way the roster is now, it needs to be Gabe Davis. He needs to be the number 2 wide receiver. He needs to be the appropriate Robin to Diggs's Batman. To me, he has that in his arsenal. He is that type of player that he can be the 1A if necessary, or the appropriate 1B or secondary option here to Diggs. But it doesn't always have to be that. This was an afternoon, 7 targets, 6 catches, 92 yards, and a touchdown for Gabe Davis. That led the team taking advantage of the opportunities. That was great. Does Gabe Davis have to produce like that week in and week out for this offense to keep humming? I don't think so. Diggs came out the gate hot. It was a concerted effort to get him involved. And as the game went on, I think that's where the distribution really came along there. I think it's just more about a collective effort to take the pressure off of Stefon Diggs, as well as Josh Allen and Ken Dorsey scheming things up to allow that to happen. You mentioned the distribution here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different guys caught a pass. Gabe Davis, 6 for 92. Diggs, 7 for 66. Kincaid, 5 for 43. Cook, 4 for 36. Shakir, 1 for 11. Knox, 3 for 10. Murray, 2 for 9. Hardy, 2 for 4. And Gilliam, 1 for 3. I think if Kincaid, Cook, Knox, Davis, throw in Sherfield and Hardy into that mix, I think if some sort of a combination of all of that can continue to evolve and be productive week in and week out in some combination, that satisfies what you need to, again, open things up a little bit and take some of the pressure off of Stefon Diggs.
You mentioned Shakir, John. That was a hot topic during training camp, before training camp, after training camp, going into the season. Just that one catch, but it was for a touchdown, and one hell of a throw and catch by Allen and Shakir right before the half. I think there was like under or right around 10 seconds left. But I think you and I both kind of agreed before the season started that would be where Shakir's role would be throughout the year. Maybe your catch or 2 during a game, but he comes up clutch when the team needed something going into halftime.
I think that's what you're going to get out of the Sherfield, Hardy, Shakir mix. I think from those back-end wide receivers, it may be just a play that could be critical. It may be a game like you saw Isaiah McKenzie a couple times in New England have an Isaiah McKenzie game. Do I think consistently they're going to be prominent or have moments that are worthy of discussion week in and week out? No, I think it's more of a collective, again, with those back-end people, the prominent ones, and we're seeing it early. Who are the top 3 guys in targets in this game? And I think this is probably a pattern in some pecking order to expect week in and week out. Davis, Diggs, and Dalton Kincaid. I think him continuing to be heavily in the mix and in the top of the list in terms of targets for the pass catchers is notable through 2 weeks. And I think the rookie 5 for 43, that's reasonable to expect it. I know some people thought bigger Cole Beasley playing in the slot, expect maybe more wide receiver Cole Beasley slot numbers. I don't think that's necessary, but an encouraging start for Kincaid, an encouraging start for the secondary and third options-esque in terms of the tiers of the pass catchers as well, with Davis and Diggs leading the way.
And I was one of those guys who thought he'd be a bigger Cole Beasley because the GM told me so. James Cook, John, over 100 yards rushing on the ground. We talked a little bit after the Jets game that, you know, his new role as their number one back. He looked decent against the Jets. He looked really good in this one against the Raiders. And again, it shows in the passing game and in the run game.
17 carries, 123 yards, 7.2 a clip. Kevin, what is the phrase we always use when discussing the Bills' running game? They don't need to run it more.
Smarter.
They need to run it more efficiently.
Right.
And I'd say 7.2 yards per pop is good. He had the 36-yarder at the end to get him over 100 yards. He just looks different than any running back the Bills have had in recent history. You got the tail end of LaShawn McCoy, didn't have the LaShawn McCoy burst, but you saw some moments. I'd maybe think it'd be fair to say since LaShawn McCoy, and I'm not comparing James Cook to LaShawn McCoy by any means, I'm simply saying the eye test of a guy that can get the edge and make it happen and turn that corner and turn something that, as solid of a running back as Devin Singletary is, he just can't make those plays. Those are the physical limitations, and that's why the Bills went out and got James Cook. I think, Kevin, and I'm sure you want to evolve the conversation into this, is James Cook goes 17 for 123, but it was interesting to me to see the distribution of snaps, and we'll get the exact numbers tomorrow, of the involvement of Damian Harris as well as Latavius Murray.
Well, yeah, I was going to get into that, John, because it looks like the three running backs executed the role you and I would think that they would have in this offense. James Cook, the primary running back, delivered over 100 yards on the ground, over 120 yards on the ground. You have Latavius Murray come in after the turnover and get the ball a couple of times. Hard-fought rushing yards, hard-fought rushing touchdown. And then Damian Harris, John, and again, you know, we get busy in this business when the game's coming to an end because we got to set up and do other things. But it looked like they were leaning on Harris to run the clock out at the end of the game, and the bigger back just feeding him the ball and letting him gain some tough yards. So the three of them combined as a unit, basically doing what we thought that they were all there to do.
I'll say this. I don't know if I thought that this is how they would deploy them, because we've never seen them play three running backs. We always would have the conversation when the running game wasn't up to snuff and wasn't performing great of saying, what about TJ Yeldon over there on the practice squad? Or what about so-and-so over there on the practice squad? And then it really never happened except for any sort of an injury. So to see James Cook, Damian Harris, and Latavius Murray all have carved out a bit of a role, as you said, of Murray's the dependable guy who's going to get you some tough yards. Harris is a guy that I think has a good combination of maybe what both of the other backs bring of he can be a bruiser. He has some burst in there. I think he's a well-rounded guy, can catch the ball as well. He's a good complement to all of that. And then you got James Cook, who is showing that he can be the guy who shoulders the majority of the load while also not needing to be the guy. You mentioned a couple drives. Cook kind of was absent for a drive and a half or something like that before coming back into the game. And I think it also will ultimately benefit all three of them. James Cook is young, but he's always kind of been in a platoon situation, certainly was at Georgia, was a year ago, his rookie season with Devin Singletary. Latavius Murray's 33 years old. The dude's definitely still got it. He's got the juice. But I think 6, 8, 10 touches or something is probably good for him, especially the earlier portion of the career. And Damian Harris, he's a guy that showed he could be a bit of a workhorse in New England, but was also part of how Bill Belichick operates his running backs with 2, 3+ guys all getting the ball and being part of the game plan here. An interesting utilization of 3 guys that I think are all talented and all bring something to the table. We will see how that continues to move forward here, because I also don't necessarily anticipate the Bills running the ball 30+ times a game.
Yeah, right. And got to bring up Spencer Brown, John, because critical of him following the Jets game, and I think he deserved it. He deserved people to criticize him. But a better performance in this game against the Raiders pass rush.
I mean, Max Crosby is a beast.
Right.
That dude's he's phenomenal. I think someone said it, I think, asking one of the Bills players heading into this game this week of, is he almost underrated? And I think that would be a fair assessment for Max Crosby. He's not talked about in the pantheon of upper echelon pass rushers, but the dude's great. He did have 7 tackles, but he had no sacks, no quarterback hits. And you're right, Spencer Brown was really spotlighted for the way he kind of got beat up and bull rushed a bit by that great defensive front of the New York Jets. And to hold up 6 days later the way that he did is encouraging. I will just say this. To me, Spencer Brown has not just been this guy's been bad. I think this has kind of been what you've seen from Spencer Brown, which is why I think the Bills certainly are not willing and ready to give up on him. But I don't think anyone else should either, because he shows moments and shows games like this where he can handle his own. It's just inconsistent performances from Spencer Brown. He's a big, talented, and young dude. You just need to see things even out, I think, a bit more, because the talent is there, as shown here this afternoon against an elite guy like Max Crosby. You just need to see it then next week against another good front like Washington has, moving forward against the Dolphins the week after that. You just don't want to ride the wave. And guys will get beat in a game. I just mean be consistent game to game. It doesn't have to be perfect and not allow anything ever.
The overall look of the offense, John, in total, and how they were able to just run clock and keep the Raiders' offense off the field was pretty impressive. A number of long drives, yardage-wise, but as far as chewing time off the clock was pretty amazing on what they did, especially in the second half.
Right. I'm looking here. 9-minute drive to open the second half. Then a 3-minute drive. It only went 37 yards. 7.5 minutes. I mean, they're chewing clock. They're chewing clock. The way that they're able to do things like that. And it was balanced. I know as the game went on, they kind of leaned into the run a little bit more, but this is also part of the conversation of, I rattled off the distances of these passes, 2 yards, 3 yards, 8 yards, 5 yards. That's fine. If it's a pass play too, it runs the clock keeps going, and it gets people involved. And the defense certainly, I think, got worn down there. The Bills, 29 first downs, 450 yards. They ran 74 plays to Vegas's 39.
Wow.
And the time of possession was 40-20. So if you're on the field for 2/3 of the game, I don't care how well conditioned you are as a premier athlete, you're going to get gassed. And so this was truly, again, I'll go back to what Dawson Knox said, imposing their will. If you can go 74 plays at 6 yards a pop and be on the field for 40 of the 60 minutes, I mean, that's dominating, even though it wasn't boom, 40-yard touchdown, boom, 50-yard touchdown, Josh Allen trying to hurdle someone and actually does it, steamrolling people. It wasn't all of that. And the stats are going to pop off the page individually outside of probably James Cook. But this truly was, start to finish, outside those first 2 drives, just absolute in control.
And finally, on the offensive side of the ball, for the go for it on 4th and short crowd out there, the Bills did that. They came up short at 4th and goal at about the 1 in the first half, but they ended up scoring a little bit later anyways. They brought out Tyler Bass to kick a field goal, got together, decided to go for it on 4th and goal, got the touchdown in the second half to keep pulling away from the Raiders, John. So for the gotta go for it on 4th and short crowd, it looks like the Bills are going that way this season.
Big fan of it. I mean, I think Sean McDermott is shown to be fairly on the aggressive side in those types of scenarios. I despise the play call on that 4th and goal on the one. To me, you see Jalen Hurts, who's a fraction of the size of Josh Allen, just sneak it. And if you get stuffed on a sneak, I think I could stomach that a little better than getting cute with Deontay Hardy in motion. And I know some people said watching the broadcast that Stephon Diggs was open and all of this. I didn't love it. Just, that's an instance where I don't think you need to get too cute, but I'm glad that they went for it. I even liked that one of the instances, Sean McDermott had the field goal unit out there, called a timeout, reassessed, and then had the offense come back out there and go for it. I like it, and it shows confidence, and that's what Deion Dawkins said after the game. It shows confidence that the head coach is like, especially from an offensive line standpoint, you boys are holding up really strong. I have faith that we will be able to at least get a shot at executing the play. It didn't work again on that goal line play, but by and large, I love the aggressive nature, and it shows a lot of confidence in the offense as a whole.
Bills offense didn't look great at the very start of the game, nor did the Bills defense, John. It looked like we were in for a long afternoon, but that Bills defense, John, settled in, and now we're 2 games in, and the defense looks like a solid group on how they handled the Raiders today.
Yeah, -4, loss of 4, and a Josh Jacobs run to start. Ed Oliver, the crowd is boosted up there.
I loved it.
And then 12 yards, 17, 34, 16, touchdown, and everyone's like, what on earth just happened? Here we go again. I'm sitting next to Andy Young in the press box, our buddy and colleague, and he's like, wow, that he was taken back too. And asked Taron Johnson about that after the game, and he said, I think we were just a little too juiced up. I think the message then on the sideline after that first series was, all right, let's settle in, let's calm down, let's make sure we're executing and playing the way that we need to. And you notice that after it. I mean, if that's a 75-yard touchdown drive, everything else after that, net yards 14, 5, 46, 7, 13, 23, 17, and then 60 yards at the end. I mean, they weren't getting anything. 1 first down, none, 3, none, 1, 1, 1, 3. I mean, it was locked down after that. And I don't know where you want to start the conversation, Kevin. It can be how the defensive line continues to look good, how nice to see some youngsters making plays, or just in general, the running defense, which was something we discussed that was maybe a concern coming out of the Jets game. Silencing critics would be a mild way of putting it.
Well, let's do this. Let's start with one of the big questions going into the season. Once Terrell Bernard was named the middle linebacker, how was he going to handle the role, his duties, John? Gregory Rousseau, the pass rush. Gregory Rousseau gets his hand on a ball. Bernard gets the interception, John, and that right there, you could say, is the moment that this game just swung the other way. Bills with a short field, able to take advantage. So we'll start with Bernard and Benford. We'll start with the younger guys and how they performed in this game yet again.
Terrell Bernard leading the team with 6 tackles, had that great interception, and I put it on Twitter. This is not an indictment on Tremaine Edmonds, and he very well could have made that play. I'm not saying he's not talented enough to do that, but Bernard's size, his skill set is catered to make plays like that, to be a ball hawk. And yeah, he was right at the line of scrimmage. It's not like it was made down the field, but that's just something that I feel like Terrell Bernard can bring to the table. A little more dynamic playmaking ability of game-changing moments like that, which that was. That was not an easy play, even though the ball was batted up in the air. It took some skill to dive and make the grab. You're right. You talk about the play itself, the interior. I mean, Daquan Jones, he was blocked, attempted to get blocked, and he just blew up the dude up the middle and was almost in Jimmy G's grill before he turned around. And that did that. The swat by Rousseau, the big man off the edge, and Bernard, yeah, that was a big one. I think here it seems that Bernard is getting rave reviews in terms of his ability to call the defense, which as linebackers coach Bobby Babich made clear, Sean McDermott, back when this was a competition, that was the number one thing that matters most to them, is the person who holds the middle linebacker spot can call the defense and get people lined up properly. So far, so good, according to the coaching staff. And you don't see anything glaring from the naked eye for those of us either in person or watching on the broadcast. And I think it's still going to be a learning curve and still going to be some moments where an undersized guy may have some issues and just inexperience overall. But if Terrell Bernard is at least communicating the defense properly, I think there's so much talent around him that it almost insulates him to not feel or not have a need for him to play at a Pro Bowl type level that the Bills had for 5 years, not all 5 years, but with Tremaine Edmonds at the middle linebacker spot for 5 years.
Yeah, and as far as that pass rush goes, or that front four bringing the pressure, we already mentioned Ed Oliver on the first drive. We mentioned Gregory Rousseau getting his hand on that ball. John, A.J. Epinesa busting through and batting a ball down that you could see the frustration. He thought he might be able to track it and get the pick off there. So here we are 2 weeks in a row now. It looked like, I'm blanking. The defensive end there who was injured, but it looks like he's going to be all right, I think. I saw a report.
Oh, Leonard Floyd.
I kept wanting to say London Fletcher. Idiot me. Been around too long. I got London Fletcher stuck in my head. Leonard Floyd, yeah. So the pressure there now, 2 weeks in a row, John, that unit is getting the job done.
Absolutely agree. And boy, is that encouraging to see because of how critical, rightfully so, a lot of people, including us, were of the lack of pass rush and push from the front four with the absence, of Von Miller the back end of last season. I think it's encouraging to see that the wave, and as I mentioned going into the season, when you think Von Miller's out, pass rushers off the edge, that's where you focus. I think the interior is just as critical and playing just as well. And you've seen things, as I mentioned, the Bernard interception, that was created because of the incredible push up front from Daquan Jones, Ed Oliver wreaking havoc the first 2 weeks as well. If the interior can disrupt things and move the quarterback off the spot, that flushes them a little bit to the outside, helping the pass rush from the guys on the edge, on top of disrupting the timing overall and helping the defense succeed. This defensive front is loaded with talent. They rotate in waves like it's a hockey line switch, and it's proving to be effective through the first 2 weeks, and it makes it even more exciting to think about the opportunities of whenever Von Miller comes back, if that's in London, week 5 or after that, you can temper the expectations or the team's need for him to play like Von Miller out the gate rather than just let him reacclimate, reinsert himself into this rotation and slowly build things up, understanding he's a 34-year-old coming off an ACL injury. He's not someone that has to be Superman. He's someone that just needs to be another piece in the wheel. So now they're coming in with Floyd, Miller, Rousseau, Epinesa. Shaq Lawson can come in there as their 5th defensive end. And it's just a wave of never-ending, relentless pressure off the edge, already paired with the 4 or 5 guys in the middle. I think it's encouraging, and let's see if it can continue through the Commanders, through Miami, and then we wait and see when the clock starts ticking of when Miller could return.
One of the big concerns with the Raiders stopping the run and Josh Jacobs, John, and I think the Bills took care of that. 9 carries for him, minus 2 yards rushing. So the concern over the big man and stopping the Raiders' rushing attack seems like it was a pretty decent focus for Sean McDermott and the Bills' defense after allowing a couple of big runs to the Jets back in week 1.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and we talked about it after the game of the numbers at the end of the day were somewhat skewed because you had the 83-yard run. He had 109 yards, Breece Hall, after the first 2 carries of the game. And then he had about 20, 30 yards the rest of the way. So they got better as the game went on, talking to guys afterwards and throughout the week about what went wrong. It was spacing and just tackling. And the Bills' tackling was much better this afternoon. Josh Jacobs, just for reference, a year ago, the NFL's leader in rushing yards, the rushing champion. His career low in rushing yards was 7 attempts for 16 yards back in 2021. So as you mentioned, 9 carries for -2 yards. You take him in this performance against a great running back in Josh Jacobs. You go back and you just think a year ago, different teams, but still the way they held Nick Chubb, another one of the top tier running backs in football, in check when they had to play that game that was moved into Detroit. I think that was his career low as well last season. They have the ability. I think it's just consistency, and there must have been a concerted effort, Kevin, to right those wrongs of a week ago. And again, it was spacing, being in the right spot, and tackling, which is where the point of emphasis from the Bills heading into this one, to right the wrongs. And I think they did so amazingly.
Before we move forward, Jon, I just, in my notes here, Matt Milano, INT, wow, LOL. So now we have 2 games, 2 interceptions from Matt Milano, the linebacker, Jon. And this one just kind of made me chuckle a little bit about how it was basically going up and over the intended pass catcher and just saying, nope, this ball's mine.
It was unbelievable. And you talk about a guy that I wouldn't say came out of nowhere last year, but took his game to a next level and earned the right of being a first-team All-Pro. You wonder sometimes how guys can back that up. I know it's only been 2 weeks. The interception against the Jets was great, and this one was incredible. I mean, it was literally robbery. I mean, he took it right out of the dude's hands and made a great play, flying all around Milano. And I think when we go back to Bernard, I think it really helps Terrell Bernard when you have such a talented top-tier echelon player next to you at the linebacker spot. It also takes some of it. Everyone has their own job. But when you have a guy that talented as Milano out there, I think he can really help, not only help, guide Terrell Bernard, but I think his play alone can maybe also directly impact and protect Bernard a little bit as well.
Yeah, I don't know how often this happens, but I just find it weird. And when we're recording this, the 4 o'clock windows are still open, so games are still going on. But I find it weird that the Raiders played the Broncos and then the Raiders play the Bills, and that the Commanders, who's up next for the Bills, are also playing the Broncos right before having to take on the Bills, Jon. I know that happens with AFC East teams, but it seems odd that, you could honestly sit there and watch how each team stacked up against the Broncos to possibly gauge what the Bills might have coming up next.
Odd. You busted out some Boston with that odd. I can't even replicate it there.
Odd. It's odd, Jon.
The odd? Are we talking about where the Sabres used to play?
Yeah, the odd downtown.
Exactly. That's an astute observation by you, Kevin.
I was just walking by a TV on my way into this podcast room.
I mean, we're live on YouTube and Facebook, and we're on podcast platforms. I'm proud of you, Kevin. On this Sunday, much like the Bills, you have stepped your game up and really responded here in week 2.
Yeah, I'll have to keep stepping up like that. Like I said, Josh Allen needs to continue to play like he did this week against the Jets, and we can't have too many of those Wild West Josh Allen games where he's chucking the ball down the field like he's a rookie moving forward.
100%. And that's not an astute statement there. I think that's pretty obvious. We've had conversations like this before about Josh. They just haven't necessarily been to the lengths of the egregious decision-making that we saw in a game that didn't call for it against the Jets on Monday night. I liked what I saw from Allen. You don't need to expect 83% completion percentage from him week in and week out. You don't expect him to be check down Charlie so much, but I think patience, a continued evolution of this style of play, make defenses get some film for weeks. If this is how the Bills can win and methodically play things, then if you get weeks down the line and you face different teams, they're going to have to say, well, this is the way we have to play them now. We have to play them closer. And then you can counter with something else. It's a fun chess match here, and I think teams will, regardless of the output of this game and how great Allen played and made decisions, I think teams are going to continue to press him and dare him to do this to see if the patience can remain. And that's going to be the biggest test, I think, for Allen.
Yes, 1-1 on the season now. The Bills, after their win over the Raiders, as we said, the Washington Commanders up next. Bills back on the road. Jon and I will get you ready for that game coming up on Wednesday with another Buffalo End Zone podcast. For now, as always, thank you for joining us, everybody.